Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Be Wise. I am Loretta Simpson, your host. I'm just going to reflect on a conversation that I have been frequently having with this generation. I had a conversation with a young lady just on yesterday talking about the levels of microaggression within a work environment. There is a push and a pressure to get African Americans vaccinated, particularly in public health sectors. I also had the same conversation a month ago with another young lady in a different part of the state who was struggling with being targeted by those that she worked with. I also had this conversation a few months back with someone else who was dealing with microaggression and racism. I thought I'd move around a little bit. I am in Martha's Vineyard, hanging out, working really hard, extremely hard. I haven't had a whole lot of time to explore and visit the island because I truly have been working all day and all night, but I decided to brighten it up and come into this beautiful sunroom to enjoy it for a little bit. But I want to talk about the pressures that we are currently dealing with, some levels of insecurities, and then the inability to try to put all of these pieces together. This is certainly a time and a climate where we should be focusing on collective works and responsibility. Kwanzaa talks about umoja. There is a time where we should be a united front. And if that time has a place, it is a good time in history to focus on umoja today. So there are opportunities, there are energies in the air that will set the stage to create a level of capitalism and structure just like it was during 1921 Black Wall Street, the Tulsa Race Massacre. So I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I can identify with the challenges of the 1921 Holocaust that left a city crippled, and every time there was an opportunity to gentrify a neighborhood, it happened on a regular basis, including ensuring that the community suffered with many forms of addiction, oppression, whether it was slumlords, whether it was overwhelmed or overcome by narcotics, and then certainly there was issues within public sector and public support. So when you think about the realities of public sectors and public health services and how it targeted minorities by offering or not offering the desired services. So there was always a gap in between public policy versus public responsibility. So when you think about public responsibility, these are the things that come into play: ethics, values, respect. So if you have public leaders who do not have common values or shared values, then there's no really call for them to reach out across the table to do what is required to ensure that there is equity and that there is fair distribution. So I believe that we have to deal with this identity crisis that we are suffering with. And in addition, we must recognize that ever since we came over on the transatlantic slave trade, by way of the transatlantic slave trade, equity and access was never part of the equation. So we have to get that idea of access and equity out of our mind and to start to create these own agendas for us. We need our own banks. We need our own grocery stores. We need our own medical practice, people we can trust. We need our own administrators. When you think of other diasporans who are thriving in this place we call the United States, you think about the Jews, you think about the Germans, you think about the Asians, you think about the Arabs. Even within the United States, they have their own sectors within their communities. And they also have public servants that cater to their needs. These people have been able to successfully integrate through networking, through communication, and through unity. They've been able to overcome systemic racism and oppression based on their ability to work together to solve their issues as a group, as a people. So I believe that if we as Africans would come together in this place called the United States, that we too can begin to make headway, not just from a pretentious level, but from an avenue that produces change and longevity for generations to come. I don't understand this notion of being on the bottom. We are the first and we shall be the last. We are the head and not the tail. But many of us function as if we are the tail. And if you are on the tail end of this platform, why not motivate and push those that are in the middle and the head of the platform? So we all know that we all can be equal. We don't arrive at the same place at the same time. But clearly there's an opportunity to show support, to show love, and to show that you are united in an effort that would produce positive change. So if you are in an environment that goes against your values, your beliefs, that does not subscribe to the idea that you are a human being and you have just as much rights to society and civilization and everything that produces for you, then I say perhaps that you are in the wrong environment. And it's okay to take yourself out of the equation to ensure that your psychosocial well-being remains intact. So you want to make sure that you're grounding yourself and keeping yourself based. When you're suffering for many years, particularly from about 2014 to 2017, I began to develop some major health complications. And every time I would go to the doctor, there was always a battery of tests. There was also a bag of medicine to go along with that. Every prescription in the book probably at one given time for a particular diagnosis I was prescribed. So 12, 14 different prescriptions at a time. And then even with the prescriptions, that was still not creating any type of balance. And additionally, it was causing some extra issues or more health issues that I had anticipated, or additional health issues that I could not manage. So what I decided to do was to take a mental break and do a purification and a cleansing. So this was a 30 or 40-day journey And the first couple of weeks was very challenging because all of the psychological, the emotions, the toxins was hitting my bloodstream all at the same time. But after about 10 days, I began to settle myself and realize that the disease that I was battling was dis-ease. So there was so much stress and anxiety and dis-ease that it was affecting my central nervous system. So in order for me to repair the central nervous system, I had to get to the root of what was causing the dis-ease in my body as well as my mind. So oftentimes when we're going through stress or have high levels of anxiety, I like the message that Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about. She talks about PTSD, post-traumatic slave disease, a disorder. And we oftentimes struggle with PTSD. There are opportunities to be able to have real conversations about where we are and how oppression and police brutality, as well as stress, even going to a grocery store or to a mall or to a boutique store where someone is watching you and following you around. I can tell you, I used to love dealers, but the last 2 years, dealers and dealer security has become almost unbearable. When you go to the store, they follow you around. Now, I've been in dealers and watched Europeans steal like crazy. I've watched a lady who looked to be almost 80 years old, loading her purse out and running to the car. And so when I mentioned it to one of the sales girls, I said, I don't understand why you're watching me. And this lady has come in and out of the store several times, loading stuff up and stealing. And the lady simply said, yes, we know that she comes to steal, but we're not bothering her. So what white people or Europeans do and get away with, we don't have that same opportunity or ability to do that. So my idea was not to be contributing to the success of dealers. Once I realized that dealers had biases and was truly extremely racist, that was the last time I shopped in dealers. But unfortunately, it's unfortunate for dealers because I spent a lot of money up in dealers. But I loved those things, but I hated the fact that I was being marginalized and compartmentalized and labeled as something that I was not when somebody else was doing exactly what you expected me to be doing. So there is, with this current energy and levels of stress and anxiety in the air, please find yourself an outlet. Please ground yourself and know who you are as a person. Particularly, try to connect with your culture and enjoy the experience. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. When you think about this brainwashing and classical conditioning, this has been going on for years. Colonization really did a number on our people, and we are doing a number and a disservice on ourselves now. So as I have stepped out of my comfort zone, a space that I am familiar with and for years have gravitated to, have now entered into this beautiful new space that we have added on to the vineyard. It's a beautiful sunroom with skylights. You can see the trees. If you sit out here at night, you can see the stars. So it's a beautiful place to be, but it has made me transition from something that I was familiar with to now being in something that I'm not familiar with, but I'm learning to enjoy the space. It's new, it's fresh, it's calming, so why not? So I want to encourage you today to stay grounded, stay rooted, get to know who you are as a person, embrace yourself, embrace your culture, and love one another. Have a blessed day.